Welcome to Marseille, its famous cathedral, the Old Port, and just behind it, the Belzunce district, a vibrant neighborhood with a lot of shops located at the center of the city. It is the heart of Marseille, an area open on the Mediterranean Sea which has welcomed successive waves of immigration. It's also where the Marseillaise, the French national anthem, was sung for the first time back in 1792. Mustapha has worked for the past 4 years in his father's halal butcher shop.
Voilà, ça vous fait 13,80 €, s'il vous plaît.
He regrets the poor reputation of Belzunce.
The neighborhood has a bad reputation. It has had for quite some time. It's very mixed. Maybe that's where this reputation comes from. Otherwise it's a normal place. People are the same as anywhere else.
In the market of the Rue Longue des Capucins, most stalls are run by French vendors of North African origin. It is known as the Arab market. Many Marseille residents are reluctant to visit this neighborhood that's nicknamed Algiers too. Yet the atmosphere is pleasant and food is cheap.
If there was less racism, it would be better.
You feel there's a lot of racism?
The younger generations are, how could I put it, dishonest. They say they're not racist, but they are. I'm against racism.
Despite his local Marseille accent, Kader has experienced discrimination since he arrived from Algeria 40 years ago.
Why are you mixing all these? Then again, mixing can be beautiful. It makes beautiful children.
According to him, things are getting better for immigrants in France.
I tried to take studies, but at the time there was discrimination. I couldn't finish school, so I had to do manual labor. So I started selling fruit and vegetable. That's what I still do now, and I've been doing this for 30 years. But now things are different. There are young people, young Arabs, who are going places in society.
Kader considers that the debate on national identity sounds threatening.
This national identity thing puzzles me a little. I feel that we're returning towards racial discrimination. I think it's a step backwards, no?
Marc Seban created this mobile phone shop at the feet of the Belzunce Towers. He is an Algerian-born French Jew who arrived here 40 years ago. He sees no point in this debate.
Marseille is like an annex of Algeria. What we left there, we found here. There's no national identity. We're all the same. We deal with people with our hearts. You saw it, we all hug each other.
National identity is also talked about on the Gazelle, the community's local radio, an institution in Belzunce. Today, the listeners can take part in a special program about the national identity debate.
This debate is a distraction to make the people forget the economic and social distress we face at the moment and make them focus on the immigrant, allow me the expression, the Arab, the Muslim, scapegoat for all the problems of France.
Minutes later, listeners start reacting on the phone.
Excuse me, we have a call.
What we want is to be recognized as real French people, because that's what we are, whether they like it or not. There are those who say we're French. Well, I say we're more French, and we have been for decades. Excuse me, I'm starting to stutter.
So now they want to ban the veil. Why would they prohibit a small scarf that's not even 50 centimeters long? They just play with religion as they please.
The longer I live in France, the more I think I'll just return to my country, because things are just going from bad to worse. We are already making efforts to be accepted. I've learned French, I live in France, I pay my taxes, and I'm still looked upon as if I were a thief.
Abdelmajid, the presenter, is especially concerned for the younger generations who don't know the culture of their countries of origin and who feel rejected.
They cling on to fragments expressed by people who don't know what they're talking about, and it creates a certain distraction in their minds. Then the national media presents them as brainwashed fanatics, seduced by mullahs or whoever. But basically, They're just young people seeking an identity that France has failed to give them.
These three towers built in the 60s are the heart of Belzunce. French people of all colors and all faiths live here. Seduced by the size of the apartments, Fabrice Micheluti moved here 7 years ago with his wife and children.
We don't talk about national identity in the tower. No one meets on the landing to chat about this debate. I think it's a bit surreal that we should ask ourselves such questions. What does being French mean? Well, you know, everyone lives it in his own way. I suppose one should speak French. That does indeed sound like a necessary foundation, but apart from that, as some politicians would say, let everyone live their Frenchness as they wish.
Moussa is the building's supervisor. He immigrated to France from the Comoros Islands. He arrived in Marseille 16 years ago after serving in the French Army's Foreign Legion. Here, everybody knows and appreciates him.
Despite the different communities who live in this building, I've never had problems with the residents. Everyone gets on. When there's a problem, they talk to each other and solve it. It's never gone beyond that.
For Moussa, it's time to go to the roof and check on the elevators. An opportunity to bring up the touchy issue of national identity with this Muslim who is also a former French soldier.
National identity, when I hear about it, it just disgusts me. I wonder who's the real Frenchman and who the fake one is. That's the question. Who are the real French people? Who are fake ones? So today there are fake French people who deserve lessons and others who don't. That's the issue. If it wasn't for these elections, we would not have talked about national identity. What will we come up with in 2012? Maybe demolish the mosques?
This mosque is one of the largest in Belzunce. It's a simple shop converted into a prayer hall, little space, and lots of people. There are 72 mosques of this type in Marseille, while over a quarter of the population is Muslim. With recurring themes such as the burqa or the slaughtering of sheep for the Muslim holidays, they feel singled out in the debate over national identity. Sarah, Mohammed and Hakim are three members of the JMF, a Muslim NGO that offers sport and cultural activities. Sarah is a student and she wants to teach French at public schools, but she also wants to wear her veil.
We know very well that this debate is really about Muslims and their acceptance in this society. So I honestly think this is an unnecessary and very dangerous question.
According to these volunteers who work with young people, the debate over national identity is stirring up problems.
I don't encourage girls to wear the burqa, but I see how it is stigmatized. People are placing too much emphasis on this, and if nothing changes, the situation will get out of hand.
When I was in the army, I learned and understood what liberty, equality and fraternity meant. Today, with this national identity debate, these values are being attacked. They're pushing all Muslims to one side. They want to separate them from the rest of society and show everyone that they're black sheep, that they'll never integrate into French society.
However, in Marseille things are evolving. Muslims will soon have a brand new mosque. Despite some opposition, the building permit has been issued and work should begin soon. According to a survey conducted by the mayor in 2003, 57% of Marseille residents support the project.
We've noticed that half the donors were non-Muslims, and many support the project, saying it's normal, it's legitimate. They say they don't understand why it was not done earlier.
Back to Belzunce. Until the Great Mosque is built, the black African Muslims will continue to gather here to pray. A basement turned into a mosque where the sermon is always delivered in both languages. Today, the Imam is of Comorian origin, and he has decided to talk about national identity.
Sometimes, when you say you're Muslim, you feel ashamed. We're so poorly viewed. We're judged on a few extremists. People today talk about the burqa. They talk about the hijab. They talk about national identity. This is what's in the news at the moment. But who are they really talking about? We live in France and we're Muslims here in France. We must integrate. But integration doesn't mean we must abandon our religion.
Makete Cissé is an example of integration. This computer engineer is the vice president of the Committee for the Great Mosque of Marseille. He chose to contribute to this debate over national identity.
I have attended several debates. 80% of the time the subject is Islam. It feels like Islam is the real core of this debate. It is indeed a good question, but it isn't presented properly. So the real question is quite simply how to integrate Islam in Europe and in Western culture. That's the real debate. You can tell because nobody talks about civic problems or fundamental republican values. Another real problem is social integration.
In the most multi-ethnic neighborhood of the most cosmopolitan city of France, unrest is brewing over the debate about national identity.